Welcome to Spotlight on Everyday Heroes. Today we share the inspirational story of Raysa Santiago, who navigated through significant life challenges, including relocation, divorce, bankruptcy, and child's autism diagnosis. Her journey led to a realization of the importance of financial literacy and credit repair, prompting the establishment of a successful business. Through resilience and consistency, Raysa discovered her purpose and the ability to help and inspire others. Meet Raysa now here on my podcast.
So for me, it's been a long journey. A little bit about me, just to get kind of into background. I was born in Puerto Rico, and at the age of 1, my mom decided she wanted to move to the United States. So I really wasn't raised there. I was pretty much raised here. And she moved to a city called Bridgeport, Connecticut. And between Bridgeport, Connecticut and Springfield, Mass, those were my 2 homes growing up. So I feel like part of who I am now was created early, because I was going from different cities all the time, new schools all the time. I just remember in middle school, you're only supposed to be in middle school for 3 years, and I just remember being in probably 3 different schools in middle school. It wasn't until 9th grade high school where my mom finally settled and we stayed in Springfield, Mass, and that's kind of where I lived out teenage years. And so childhood was very hard for me, but I look at it now as an advantage. I had to make friends and be social, and even though I'm introvert by nature, I can be put in a setting, and it has allowed me to be able to network now and have kind of have that bounce back, is what I call it.
I would never believe that you're an introvert. Never.
Yeah, I know. See,
even if you paid me.
I tell my team this, when we have conversations and trainings and as I'm mentoring people, and they don't believe it. It's something that I've had to overcome, over time. If I wanted to grow and I wanted to have success, I knew it came from getting out of that. Is it comfortable for me? Still, no. If you talk to me, it's game on, but if I have to start it and initiate it, that's kind of where it gets complicated for me. But overcoming them, has gotten me a lot farther. I'm not like my husband by any means. He will talk to anybody. It don't matter. If you look at him, forget about it. So I also got a lot from him.
What made you want to overcome it?
For me, initially in my childhood, I had to. I didn't have a choice. It's either like you're gonna be that weird girl that is new in our class that we don't know, different community, different neighborhood, different set of people. I didn't know who I was meeting all the time. So for me, it was more of a survival mechanism, at young age. As I transitioned into obviously my adult years, I would be called life of the party, and I'm like, I never considered myself that. And then now, being able to network with hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes on a daily basis. So I don't think that it was something I wanted to. I feel like I was forced to early on. And then as I grew older, I saw that as a key to, really sharing my story and inspiring others to say, what you're most uncomfortable with, that's what you need to do, because that's where the key to success lies. So that's what I got.
Very well said. And a lot of us in life, we have a choice, right? We can stay with this uncomfortable place and not move any past it. And that's a choice. Let's respect that. Or we can continue to push our boundaries, stretch our limits, and arrive to where we want to, because everything we want to is on the other side of uncomfortable place, outside of our comfort zone and our fear. So
100%.
Go ahead.
I discovered that late, but so yeah, that's just a little bit about my background. Springfield, Massachusetts is rough. It's inner city. I call it the hood. It just is what it is, and it was tough. Growing up as a teenager, as my mom settled there as a teenager, my mom was very strict. So I look at it back now and I see how it's an advantage to me. Because back then, as a Puerto Rican female in that city, you're just a statistic. You're gonna be pregnant at 14. You're gonna get involved with the wrong people. And so my mom being strict, I didn't see it like that then. I was like, hate my life, I couldn't even use the home phone phone at age 18. So that's how strict my mom was. But I see it now as, you know, she was just trying to protect me, you know, from that. And now I see it in a different light years later, right? So, but that was kind
thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah, thank
for the
you,
record.
Mom, you know? I always tell her that. It's like, you know, I get why you were being that way, you know, having a daughter or, you know, only daughter at that age, seeing everything that's going on with other people's kids probably, right? So we don't think of it like that when we're teenagers. We just want what we want. So that's kind of how I grew up. But again, you know, I saw my mom struggle my whole life. My mom has never owned a home. Section 8 and housing, that's what we grew up in, you know, just the government, welfare, food stamps. And, you know, not to say anything, that's my life, you know, it's not to get pity, but that's what I saw, you know. And for me, my path was that same path, you know, go get a Section 8 apartment, low income, you know, live off the government, have multiple kids. Like that's kind of where my life could have went. But for me, what I do now really resonates with why I'm doing it, because I want to change that. So I saw my mom struggle, Section 8 housing, and I always wonder why. We never had a very reliable car. Cars were breaking down. I remember having a bunch of cars broken down, catching buses in snowstorms, struggling, you know, going to food pantries, not having enough. Like I saw that all my life growing up. And my mom is not a bad mom, but she just didn't have financial literacy. And then when she did have a job and try to get her life together, it was almost like she was working hard, but then the taxes and everything, she still was struggling, living paycheck to paycheck. Like I remember my mom doing CNA work, doing 7 p.m.s to 7 a.m. Just trying. My mom she's done so many, like she's bus driver, you name it, exterminator. I've seen my mom do so much, just trying to make, you know, as a single mom ends meet. But to this day, she still doesn't own a home. You know, she still, like, she doesn't have a retirement plan. And so I started to realize this is the issue, is financial literacy. It's not something that's taught. It's something that's passed down generation to generation. So if we're learning from our parents and they don't have it, who's going to be the one to change that in the family?
So it sounds like the pivoting moment for you is that you realize that your family's struggling, and at some point you realize that you don't have to, that you have a choice. There's another path. Was there someone or something that made you realize that? How did you, because usually when you're surrounded by people that are in that same boat, it's harder to see outside of the boat.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, and it's good that you brought that up, because I didn't see the difference. I was growing up, at 16, I was going to high school, I played basketball, and I worked a job till 9 p.m., you know, at night. So I've always been that kind of person where, like, no, I'm 16, I need to get independent. And my mom, you know, that's the only thing she let me do to get out the house. So I'm like, please, I'll go do anything to be out the house. So at that time, it was kind of more like that, but I realized skills that I was building earlier. But I will say, it wasn't until I was 35 that I understood financial literacy, time freedom, residual income, investment. So think about that. That's a long time to be stuck in a cycle. No one in that time frame was giving me guidance of things to do. I was just in wrong environment.
How did you discover all those great terms, financial literacy, independence? Like how?
It wasn't until I hit rock bottom.
Okay, tell me more about that.
I hit rock bottom. I moved from Massachusetts to Florida with my first husband. He was offered a job position that was more money. And I always said to myself this: if I ever have a son, I have my son at age 30. And I always said, if I ever have a child, I will not raise them here in Springfield, Mass. I always said that. Now, I was one that never wanted to have kids, you know, so I was like 30 by the time, you know, when I had my first kid. And I really meant that. Like, I didn't want to have kids because I saw how I struggled. So it was just kind of one of those things. But when my son came along, I felt like that was a sign for me. So when he got that opportunity, I was like, let's go. I didn't think about it twice. Leaving the environment, obviously it was tough. I left my friends, family behind. I think that was the beginning, was getting out of the environment. However, did I learn that immediately by removing myself from the environment? No, I made a lot of mistakes. Then I went through my divorce. So then moving all that way, going through the divorce and seeing my finances in turmoil, like, oh my God, you know, it wasn't a good separation. Like, don't worry, I'll still help you with the bills. Like, it wasn't like that.
You're on your own.
Yeah, I'm literally all of a sudden on my own, and not to say anything bad about him, it is what it is. We didn't work out. He's still the father of my son, but I knew I had to figure it out, right? And so I found myself selling everything in my house to pay the mortgage. So all my furniture, I'm literally selling it on Marketplace, like whatever it was at that time years ago. This was in 2017. Finally, I have nothing else to sell. I had a friend. I said, hey, do you need somewhere to live? I see you live with your mom. I have an extra bedroom. I did things like that to try to make it happen, and I still was struggling. So again, it really took me hitting rock bottom, and that was just the beginning of it, because then I dealt with the roommate aspect of it, and I was like, I'm 35 years old with a roommate, so it's a really eye-opener going through the divorce. And finally, I had to file for bankruptcy because I was getting all the bills were hitting me, and I wasn't making enough money to pay it. So I filed for bankruptcy. I didn't even know what that meant. Again, was that a mistake? Maybe. I don't know. The people were like, hey, you can't pay your stuff, just file for bankruptcy so they don't take your house and your car.
Yeah,
and
but you were in a vulnerable place with no one advise you any other way. So that's the best that you could have.
I'm doing research on Google, and it's saying, bankruptcy could save your house. And all I wanted to do was save the house my son was like 1, 2 at the time, Actually, between age 2 and 4, 5-ish, we were in that position. So I'm like, oh my God, and I'm still trying to make it work year after year until I finally, I remember driving and feeling like I couldn't breathe. I was driving to work one morning. I couldn't breathe. I put the windows down. My heart was racing. I literally called my boss. I was like, I can't make it today. I drove myself to the hospital. I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I've never felt that in my life. And I get to the hospital. Obviously, they do all these checks, EKG, things like that. And the doctor comes in, obviously, hours later. It's like, I think you had a panic attack. And so that became another chapter of going through, because I was not getting ahead. And I was working 40 hours a week, sometimes 50 hours a week. I was having to get my son to school to a before care at 6 a.m. so I made it on time, pick him up, leave him in aftercare to pick him up at 6. I wasn't seeing my son. He was also diagnosed with autism that same year that I went through divorce and bankruptcy.
Add that to the list, huh? Oh my God.
So I'm learning how to be a mom, and I'm learning how to be an autism mom, which was so hard between age 1 to 5. It's so emotional for me because it's like, you think your kid is going to get to certain steps and you see everybody else's kid. And my son was nonverbal till age 5.
Wow.
Tantrums. I couldn't go to grocery stores with him. The lights, the sensory, he'd throw himself on the floor. So that was all rock bottom for me because it was all happening at the same time. Everything, right? And here I am coping through that. And now, boom, because I suppressed it so much for so long, and I'm trying to be this strong, I got this, I'm gonna figure it out. Boom, now comes the anxiety, panic attacks. And I'm like, oh my God, now I gotta take medication for this. So it was a time where it was scary for me. And I was like, I gotta figure something out. And the first thing, what led me to knowing all these things, to get back to your question, was I looked at my finances. I looked at my credit score. I'm at a 514 credit score. So what I was trying to do was like, can I rent the house out so I don't lose it and go get an apartment? So I went to a neighborhood that was not a good neighborhood. And the apartments were horrible. And they were trying to charge me almost $9,000 security deposit, first, last, whatever, because of my credit score. So my thought process then was like, if I can get an apartment, even if it's 1 bedroom, it's just me and my son, and I paid less and I rent the house, I don't lose it. So I was just trying to figure it out, right?
I really like, and just to pause for a moment, where everything started to fail, right? All those things that started to kind of pile up on you, and your body started to give up as well. You still kept on plugging through. And also the mindset thing that, how can I continue, right? You didn't give up completely, because there was an option too. You did not go that route. You said, how can I, putting that creative hat on, how can I keep the house? How can I continue to, so all those how can I, that kind of fuels your imagination up so you can figure out a lot of things.
Yes. And I think, you wrote a question on the podcast interview thing, like, what's your superpower? And I'm always going to say, getting back up, figuring it out. And that's where it all stems from. And this, obviously for time purposes, we can go into other times in my life where I've been through a lot. but this was the defining moment for me. So looking at that credit score at a 514 and saying, why? Like, why is it that I'm in this position when, I can't get a plot, I can't even get ahead if I wanted to. I have a plan and the plan's not working because of this. So then, God works in mysterious ways. I was scrolling through social media one night and I found so what I was doing, the way I found this person, because I do want to identify that. I was just scrolling on social media and I had to actually take a club promotion job at night where I was like a club promoter, and anyone I got in the door, I would make like $5. It wasn't a big thing, but for me, $50 a night was huge, So the trick around that was like, well, I know social media a little bit, so let me add some people from Tampa. So I started adding people from Tampa, Florida to my page, and I was like, well, somebody will see it, and that's how that started. And lo and behold, as you're going through the newsfeed, I find someone that posts about credit repair, and it literally says, we help you with late payment, collection, bankruptcy. And I'm like, who is, I don't know who he is. I start looking through his page. I see he's a business professional. I start to see everything that we talk about now in training. People will do business with you if they see your resume online. I'm like, okay, this guy looks legit. So that's how I found him. I sent him a message. We immediately scheduled a meeting, and that's when I first heard credit repair, financial literacy, budgeting, debt payoff, residual income, commission, building a team. That was the first time I ever heard that. So of course I'm like, this is one of those things, I'm like, I really want this, but this is one of those, all of those old mindsets. But I caught myself. I'm like, but what I'm doing right now is not working.
If you continue to do that same old thing, nothing's going to happen. And to your point, the financial literacy, they're just starting slowly to implement it in schools, but that is such a foundational skill, such a foundational, right? Right. Because here in America, they give you a credit card and off you go.
Yeah, my mom taught me that if you got credit cards in the mail, and I'm sorry, Mom, but you would just use them and you don't have to pay them back. It was free money. And I'm like, and I wonder why later on you would apply and get denied. It's like, hello.
We still love you, Mom. We still love you. But no, Mom.
But she wasn't taught either, so I don't blame her for that. But again, it's just generation where we're not taught. We thinking that this is just the way to live because this is just the environments that we're in. So that was the first time I heard that. And even then, this guy had to follow up with me a bunch of times because I was skeptical. I'm like, can this really work? Can this really, can I really do this? And I didn't have the money to get started. There was a startup fee and I didn't have it. I'm like, there's no way. So while this is all going on, and I have that in the back of my mind. So I tell that to my team now, like, plant the seed. Even if that person doesn't start today, just plant the seed of a solution and make sure you plant that seed right. And then you have to continue to water it. So for me, that was a planted seed. So every time like I would promote and no one showed at the club and I didn't make the $5, I'm like, I should do that thing. Every time I tried to do something or got paid at work and then realized, oh, I thought I had overtime, I didn't. I thought I had more money and then I didn't. I had that seed in my mind. Like I remember them talking about the commission and getting my credit fixed. So it was a seed that was planted very well. And it wasn't until I made the decision to move back to Massachusetts. So I'm like, you know what? I literally had a moment where I'm like, I give up. I'm not continuing to try to save this house. I tried. It's not working. The roommate situation not working. So I reach out to an old boss in Connecticut and I say, it was the job that I had before I moved to Florida. And I said, I'm thinking about moving back. Do you guys have anything available? Well, God works in mysterious ways. Like I said, it was just meant to be. Obviously, we can't connect the dots when we're in that position. I can connect them back now. But for them to say, yeah, we have a position. All you gotta do is apply for it. We know you. We're here 4 years, no problem. And then asking, I'm like, well, I need money to relocate. There's no way. They ended up giving me like $5,000 to relocate. So now I'm in transition. So now I'm like, whatever, house is done. I'll go back to Massachusetts. I'll figure it out. I'll start from literally nothing. So I pack up a U-Haul truck and I'm like, with the little bit that I had, because remember I sold everything. Grab my son. Long drive. Lot of thoughts in my mind. Man, I failed. I didn't want to come back. I wanted to stay here with my son. I wanted to raise him here. It's beautiful in Tampa. We had a beautiful house. So I'm feeling like a complete failure.
So let me pause you here for a second. So now kind of looking back at those thoughts, what do you think about all that? Like as that part of your life?
I
as it contributed to where you are now?
I was being sharpened. I was
prepared for the next step.
I was being sharpened. I was being put to a test, because the only way that I can help others is if I share my journey, vulnerable of where I've been. So if I don't go through nothing, that's not, that's not
Perfect.
someone that people inspire to. So I really do feel like my husband does a training on a diamond and how a diamond is found and how it's a black rock when you first find it. And those moments for me were like just chipping at it, because the mindset that you have to have in those situations.
Yeah. So right now you own and operate your own credit repair company. So being through what you've been through, as you just said, feeling through it, you can empathize with a lot of folks that are going through the same thing. So how did that idea of, at which point, I guess that idea was born? Because usually when a person is going through that turbulence, you can't see the light.
No, there was no, I honestly was thinking about me. Like, I'm like, how do I get my credit? Because remember, moving back to, and this is why I say God works in mysterious ways. Moving back to Springfield, I needed to find an apartment. Well, I just had someone charge me $9,000 for a down. So I reached out to an old landlord that I had, super sweethearts before we left. And they're like, we have an apartment. We wouldn't charge you anything. We love you. We don't even got to check your credit. Like, so when I say like things were just lining up for me to come back, and that's one thing that I asked God. I'm like, look, if it's meant for me to go back, then you'll align, things will align. And little by little, getting the 5,000 relocation, that was huge.
Are you a religious person or spiritual?
I am. My mom raised me as a Christian Pentecostal. And I really always, since I was little, always knew I had a calling. I've had ministers, really minister to me and say, you have a calling, you're going to help a lot of women, mind you, at a young age, but you don't see any of that. You're just like, I'm going through all this. How is it? And you forget. It's not until you're on the other side where you're like talking about, now. And I know that there's much more, but for sure, Christian Pentecostal, really faith-based believer. And at that time, I needed to rely on that faith even more. I remember finding a church down the street from the house, and this might sound messed up, but a parent will relate. They had childcare while you were at church. So in my mind, I'm like, I need God right now because the way my life is going. But another part of it was, I have a child with autism. I am burnt out. And if my son could be over there having fun with people that are in church for an hour while I get that was like my mentality. And some people could relate to that. A special needs mom is, and I had no support, no one that can help me. My mom obviously would help me when she could, but it was very difficult. So, but God brought me there for that reason, right? And so that's when I started to really pray and say, well, if you want me to go back to Massachusetts, everything will fall in place. So that's kind of like the story and how everything fell into place. But going back to the U-Haul and those thoughts, I felt like a complete failure. And then I'm like, my ex-husband had moved back to Springfield, Mass when we separated. That's where, we met. And I'm like, I gotta go back. I gotta deal with him. He's gonna want to be in my son's life now after we struggled the last 3 years. So I'm having all these thoughts and I'm like, I gotta do something. Because yes, I have a job, but I'm like, I gotta do something. And I gotta do something about my credit. So I took some of the relocation money and I invested in that business with the seed that was planted. Now, initially it was self-preservation. I'm like, I need to get my credit. I need to get that in order. I don't want to be in that position where I'm applying for something and I'm going to pay 10 times more. And I had been on this webinar, I start research on it, that's just how I am. So I left $1.07 in my bank account to make that investment, to say, I need credit repair for me. Again, being very selfish at the beginning, I just want this for me. I want to see if this works. I like the second half of it, I even look at that part.
So at which point, so let's say we fast forward, your credit got repaired, right? With time, obviously you put a lot of effort into it. At which point you decided to, okay, you know what? It's time for me to give back.
Yes, immediately. 90 days later,
wow.
My credit score went up 196 points. I had the bankruptcy deleted and 64 negative items deleted. And it was then that I was like, nobody can tell me this don't work. Nobody can't tell me that they don't need it. I just had the confidence, I felt like I finally found something, like you just have an intuition and a feeling like I found something. But
you saw how it worked. You saw how it worked exactly. For you, and you knew it wasn't some some, magical trick, and you were educated through the process. You learned the things, the foundations that you have never even maybe heard about, right? And then did you see other people struggling around you that maybe inspired you to
for sure
start your own thing?
For sure. My friends, I would just have conversations. Initially, the business building part, that didn't make sense to me. Building a team and the vision was put out there in our trainings, but that part was really closed off for a while. It wasn't until I started having the conversations with my friends and realized, oh, she got a 500 credit score, and she was open to tell me about it. We, as friends and in our circles, we don't talk about this. We don't say, hey girl, what's your credit? Your closest friends can have bad credit. You will never know it because there's always a front, right, around it. But me sharing opened them up to be like, oh, well, I have a 500. Can you help me? Like, it opened them up to having the convo, right? So I think that having a solution was the door, right? Showing them my results, showing them, look, this is what I did to the company, look, and getting into, I didn't even know, I didn't even think of it as being in sales mode. I was just like sharing my story. So then of course I start to look at the business and I'm like, if I can get a few customers a week, this is how much I can make. And I'm like, well, if I make that every month, can that help me with my car insurance, half of my rent? I'm like, if I just make an extra $500 from this part-time, it's something that I can work from home.
Right.
That's when it started to, okay. And my friends are in, they need it. I see it, So then I'm like, okay, well, let me do like an event. So I set up this big event where I'm going to present the information. I have my mentor fly in from Florida. I said, I need you. I have like 50 people that said they were coming. So I can't do this on my own. I could only share my story, but the way that you broke it down to me many months ago, I need you to break that down to them. Well, when he lands, a snowstorm hits.
Okay.
People in Massachusetts, even though they get snow all the time, they're like, we're not coming to the event. I had one person show up to this event.
Okay.
And anybody would have quit. To be honest, I was super discouraged. We did sign up that person, so I did make my first customer sale from doing that. But I was,
But you know what they say? The person that usually shows up is the most one that really needs it, right?
Yeah,
so
there's supposed to be 50 people here though. But to add to that story, my mentor was working with a guy locally here in Tampa that he personally enrolled 30 days prior, and they were both working the business together, became really good friends. So when I told him to come up and help me launch my market, he brought him with him, and that's now my husband.
Oh wow! Oh, what a great success story in so many ways, right? Not only it pays your bills, you're helping people, but you also met your soulmate.
I'm telling you, like it's crazy to see it and talk about it now, because the way that I was feeling then, anybody would have quit. Nobody would have looked at this. Nobody would. It was really a moldy moment for me. Even starting the business, I've had tons of failures in this business. Tons, times where I didn't meet a goal, I didn't hit this, I didn't hit that. Times where I feel I'm not enough, but I get up every day and I said, we're gonna do it again. Like that's just to be honest, that has just been my key to success. I'm just like, I'm gonna be consistent. I'm gonna do it again. Some days are good, some days are bad. And I remember starting my business and being left on red and no one sharing my stuff. And but I just kept doing it. I didn't give up. I don't, and I tell this to my team now because I'm like, I don't ever remember a moment where I said, I'm done. No, I would do the opposite. I would be like, let me go on YouTube and research collections and bankruptcy and what other strategies, and let me learn from people that are gurus. And I research residual income and commit. Like I literally would be that person where I'm like, no, like I'm going to figure this out.
This is your how-to mentality. Remember I mentioned it earlier, you try to find a way. Like I'm not giving up is not even an option. It's not in my dictionary. I'm going to stay consistent, which is a key word, another key word, consistent, because if you kind of promise to yourself that I'm going to do it no matter what, and your 100% is different on every day is different, right? You might not be feeling that same 100% they were feeling yesterday, but it's still going to be your 100%, but just on a different day. And that's okay. You're kind of allowing yourself to be in that different 100% today, which is okay, because tomorrow it's going to be a different 100.
Exactly.
Love it.
I actually
love
have
it.
that as an email signature. Consistency is better than perfection.
Awesome. I love it. Consistency is better than perfection. That's for our
You don't
listeners.
have to be perfect, but if you're consistent, that's better than perfect. So I have that as my email signature because that has really been the key. Just being consistent, not giving up, showing results, right? So over time, I had customer results. I had people on my team making money too, you know, and so little by little, I just started to share the little success stories that I had. And at the beginning, there was none. It was just mine. You know, I just shared my side. The next thing, that one customer, her credit score went up to 100. I'm posting about that. So it just became something that we continued to push forward. And even I had a very hard time building a team because not everybody has the mentality I have. But I can actually, like you said, be compassionate and understand where they are, because people will tell me they don't have the money. And I know I didn't have it either. It took me a few months to see, right, the seed being planted. And every time something happened that was related to money, thinking, man, that thing that guy introduced to me could possibly be my way out. And so I can relate to that, you know? So I tell people when they tell me they don't have the money, I'm like, look, I get it. I've been there. But just remember that if you don't do something different, things are going to remain the same. It took me doing something completely out of my comfort zone to be where I'm at today.
What is the role, Raysa, what is the role of mentorship been on your career, on your personal growth, professional growth?
Oh my God. When I think about my journey and as a business owner, who I've had to become, she's very different than who I was 6 years ago, like completely. You know, we often blame the relationship that we've had for the failure. So I look at obviously a divorce. I never wanted that. I'm a Christian, Pentecostal. Divorce is like, it's so bad. You know, you're like, you think God doesn't love you after that. And I, you know, had to overcome that thought. But for me, that wasn't an option. So that was a big failure for me. But I also thought about all the failed relationships I had before that. And I'm like, why can't I be happy? Like, why can't I find somebody? So when I say this to say this, the business had me and put me in a position where I had to communicate better. I had to become an effective communicator with people. I had to really tell my story. I had to be vulnerable, which we don't like to do. I had to,
especially for introverts, that's really hard to do.
I had to really problem solve. It's just so much that I had to learn that I never had. And I look back on those relationships and see a little bit of like my hard-headedness and things that I wouldn't stand up for and how I failed. And so changing and because I wanted my business to grow, so I wanted success in that, but I didn't know who I needed to become to do that. So, but learning that, fast forward, I've been with my husband now 6 years, my most successful relationship in my life. So I really chucked that up to who I had to become, the effective communicator with my team. I had to problem solve. Obviously, everyone's personalities are different, so I had to see where they were, their goals, their aspirations. So the mentorship piece, I feel that sometimes I need it more than my team does. Like, I get inspired by training and mentoring my team. You know, like sometimes when I'm not feeling, there's those days, they're just, you know, everybody looks at me and like, her life is perfect and she's done so much and I want to be just like her. But there's days that I'm like, I'm not doing this today. It's just the way it is, right? But then it'll take me having to train, because I like, it's already scheduled, to spark me up. Now I'm inspired by the training mentorship that I did. So it's a big role. It's a big, and did I ever 6 years ago, did I think I would be mentoring and training thousands of people? No way. No way.
Obviously, it's been a tough journey to where you are, up to the top, but you seem to be very inspiring as a person, as a businesswoman. You have your own credit repair company. You are in solar as well. What is your definition of success?
I think back then I would have said, you know, the cars, this, that. I've grown from that. I think obviously we all want nice things, and when I first, you know, gained my first 6 figures in my business, I feel like I blew it because I just never had that. Now I define it by time freedom. Like, I just enjoy that I haven't had to clock into a job the last 6 years, that I can wake up, have my coffee, not be in a commute, be able to drop off my son at school, pick him up right after. Even though I'm working at home and sometimes we're in separate rooms, I'm home and he's safe. That's the most, like, to me, that defines time freedom for me. Working on home projects, me and my husband always working on how to make this this house, better. We bought it at $230,000 and have been able to now see that grow. We've been able to now see our house value go up to almost over $500,000 in the last 3 years. And it's just been, for me, the time freedom has allowed us to do so much and learn so much. And it's also, bonding moments. Like, I get to be with my husband every day, 24 hours a day. Like, people can't say that. And we've learned to communicate, and in business, and when is the husband, and how do we deal with the kids and everything. But just the fact that I get to do that. So sometimes when I'm having those moments, like, okay, I didn't hit a goal, I hit this, I really have to ground myself and say, yeah, but you still have the best life. You still get to wake up in a beautiful neighborhood. Like, I sometimes tear up when I'm walking my dog and my son, and just seeing where he's growing up as opposed to where I grew up. Like, me and my husband, he's from New York. He was raised in Harlem, in the Bronx. So our backgrounds and how our kids are growing up, because of the change that we did, that's success.
Right. Wow. That's a very unfolding answer. And I think, as you said, it's really important to think back and be grateful for the journey that you went through, because, as you said, it's carving you out, it's preparing you. And what was the word that you said? It's basically it's preparing you for the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And the challenges, I mean, like they say in the song, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, which in the moment where you are going through it, and I've been through a lot of pivoting moments like that. I've been through divorce too, and there were days where I didn't see the light. I didn't think it's gonna get better, but being where I am now, being where you are now, it's a great point, but it takes guts, it takes a lot of hard work, but the most important thing, it takes consistency, and it takes action. You have to take action, right? Because there's a lot of people that are in the place where they don't want to be, right? They don't want to live, they don't want to be in this relationship, they don't want to be in this town, whatever it is, at this job, but they don't take action.
Right.
Clearly, that's not the case.
No.
And so for someone who's maybe they are in that place where they don't want to be, what are some golden nuggets of wisdom that you want to share with them to help them get out of it, or take action rather?
Figure it out. I mean, we live in a different era now too, where we have the internet, we have so many different ways of changing, evolving, right? But if we're stuck in the same environment, we won't grow, because those environments if you're already thinking like this, like, man, I need to do something, then you've already outgrown that environment, because half of those, if not all, they're not thinking about making a change. They're like, this is my life. So you got to get in different circles. You got to get in different environments. You've got to get uncomfortable. I mean, I moved to another state to see it. Not that you have to, but it's just, environment is everything. And just having a mentality of solution based, figure it out. Like, I always say that, and I think I learned this from one of my mentors, as long as you have breath, everything else is figure outable.
I love it. As long as you have breath, everything else is figure outable. That's perfect. At
the end of the day, you have another day, you're breathing, you're in a good position, like, you could figure it out. And you may not be seeing it that way, but if you have that mentality of, no, I'm gonna figure it out. What can I research? Who can I talk to? What are my resources? What book can I read? It's out there.
Yeah, and
the self-help industry is out there.
Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of us, we wait until we have that pivotal moment, whether it's a rock bottom, whatever it is, until we actually get to move and take action. All right, so I really appreciate hearing about your journey of challenges and challenging paths, challenging growing up environment, and how you decided to change your life around. Of course, not for nothing, you had to hit the hard bottom, and then you had that resilience, you had that gut to actually take action, be consistent, and establish your own company that is helping many, many people. So we're going to leave some information in the notes of this podcast so people can reach out to you, whether they're struggling with similar things that you've talked about, whatever it is. And I appreciate your openness to talk to them and help as many as we can, because we do need more vibes in this world. So I really appreciate your time and your vulnerable story and all the great insights that you shared with us today.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to be able to share, and if it could change one life, I'm happy with that. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Spotlight on Everyday Heroes. Did you enjoy hearing the inspiring story of our guest?
Are you feeling motivated to carve out your own unique path to success? If so, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to join the conversation and share your own success story, or if you have a guest recommendation, head on over to our website at www.capitalturners.com and let us know.